Marjorie Taylor Greene is a brand new congressperson from Georgia, and I think she's one of the people who believes in QAnon. And so now we have people like this making it to Congress. Unsurprising, I guess, because you have Donald Trump became president of the United States of America. That seems silly enough at face value, so why not? Why not throw some QAnon Congress people in there as well? Well, she's extra silly, and she went on one of the extra silly networks. I believe this is Newsmax, and she's going to float a brand new idea. This is, I believe, her first act entering Congress. Take a look at this.
Congresswoman, I understand, though, you have something pressing, something important, and something new you'd like to share with everybody.
Yes, I would like to announce on behalf of the American people, we have to make sure that our leaders are held accountable. We cannot have a president of the United States that is willing to abuse the power of the office of the presidency and be easily bought off by foreign governments, foreign Chinese energy companies, Ukrainian energy companies. So on January 21st, I will be filing articles of impeachment on Joe Biden.
Wow. Articles of impeachment on Joe Biden on his first full day as president. I'm looking at Hunter Biden right now, so we're talking about Joe. Obviously, we know Hunter's got issues as well. How is that going to work? You are a freshman. You're in the minority. What will happen next? Is this symbolic, or can you really do something about this?
Well, like I said, I'm a big believer in having people in office that are actually willing to do the job. And I can't imagine people in this country being so fearful of a future of a Biden presidency that they may be willing to commit violence like they did in the Capitol here in Washington, D.C. We cannot have that. I do not condone that violence. The American people need hope. They need to know that there are Republicans in Congress that are willing to stand up and fight for them, regardless of being in a minority, regardless of having all odds against us, against me, or against anyone in Congress. We have to hold people accountable.
Hold people accountable for what? He's not president yet. He hasn't done Dickie McGee's acts yet. Like, I get it. He's going to do stuff that you disagree with because you're a Republican and he's a Democrat, and there are differences ideologically, although unfortunately I don't think there are nearly enough ideological differences, but there's some, of course. So, do you not understand the chain of events and how it's supposed to work? Like, he has to do some shit before you're like, oh, I'm going to impeach. You can't, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I don't think impeachment works. Like, you can't impeach a president for some crime that was done outside of when they're in power, in their official capacity. So, you can't pull some sort of crime. Like Trump, for example, I would argue he's done crimes for his entire adult life, super sketchy. You cannot be a real estate developer in New York in the 80s and not have, like, deep ties to the mafia, for example. So I'm sure he was engaged in crimes of different magnitude. But, like, you can't decide, I'm going to pull up something from 1987 and impeach Trump based off that crime. You can't decide, I'm going to pull up something from 2014 or 2015 and say, I'm going to impeach Trump for that. It has to be something done while in office. So, they did go after him for, what was it? I believe the Ukraine phone call, and that was tangentially related to the Russia scandal, and, now they went after him for egging on the insurrection. But fact of the matter is, those things, agree or disagree with them impeaching him, they were done while he was in office. I was arguing, go after him for the emoluments clause, because that's just a fancy way of saying being corrupt. Taking money from foreign governments and doing favors for them. So, funny enough, her argument, theoretically, it makes sense because she says Biden's bought off by foreign governments like China and Ukraine, and there's evidence of that. Fair enough. I think Biden and his family, they are corrupt in the same way that the Clinton Foundation was corrupt, and in the same way the Trumps are corrupt. But, like, you have to wait until he's in office and some crime gets done while in office. So he would have to accept the favors from China and Ukraine and then do favors for China and Ukraine while in office. And obviously, ideally, you'd need there to be some sort of quid pro quo. Although I do think that's kind of weaselly, and sometimes the quid pro quo is obvious but silent. They don't actually spell it out word for word. But she's not even waiting until something happens while he's in office. She's just like, I don't like him. He's a Democrat. Let's impeach him. And listen, I would be a lot more sympathetic to this argument if she was consistent and cared about Trump's corruption. And she's not, and she doesn't. So she says, oh, Biden and the business deals with China and Ukraine, it's super sketchy. We got to stop that. Agreed. Now, do you have any thoughts on Trump with Israel and Saudi Arabia? Anything at all? Jared Kushner took millions of dollars from Israeli banks. And then, lo and behold, would you look at that? The Trump administration gave Israel basically every single thing they wanted. So how can that be? Are you okay with that? You don't think, hey, maybe there's some personal favors being done here? A lot was made of the Russia scandal, but what people don't remember is that there was an Israel scandal where the incoming administration, before they were actually in power, they created a back channel to Israel to try to help Israel at the UN and slap down the official U.S. government rebuke over the occupied territories. So there was something going on where there was collusion, dare I say, behind the scenes between the Israeli government and the Trump administration. Do you not see a problem with that? Do you not see a problem with Saudi Arabia giving Trump hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars through his hotel to Trump, and then Trump turning around and giving them a multi-billion-dollar weapons deal as they committed genocide in Yemen? This was like the biggest scandal that wasn't treated like it's a big scandal. But yes, the Trump family was profiting off of Saudi Arabia, and then they turned around and gave them a multi-billion-dollar weapons deal and actively helped facilitate the genocide in Yemen that's being carried out with our weapons. That seems like a big scandal to me. Now, if you don't have anything to say about the sketchy Trump business connections to Saudi Arabia, to Israel, Turkey, there's some others, by the way, they're all over the place. If you have nothing to say about that, and you don't think that's wrong, then I need you to www.shutthefuckup.org when it comes to Biden. Now, if you're consistent, okay, then I'll hear you out. And there are plenty of people who are consistent. There are plenty of people who are concerned about the corruption, cross partisan lines. I'm one of them. I called out the Clinton Foundation for being colossally corrupt. You want to know why? Because the Clinton Foundation was colossally corrupt. I called out Biden and his family being corrupt. There's a big article in Politico. This is before Biden was ever running for president, and so the media was being a little more objective when it came to the Biden family. There were incredible details about how Biden and his entire family profited off of the Biden name, and there was a lot of pay-to-play corruption going on. That's corrupt. I'll call it out. But by the same token, you damn well better call out the fact that Ivanka and Jared made over $100 million while working in the White House. The fact that they even got jobs in the White House is a scandal enough. That's nepotism 101 through and through. You should all be against that. Imagine Hillary hired Chelsea or something. Everybody would be like, what the fuck is this? You can't do that. So Trump hired his own family, and then lo and behold, look at that. They made over $100 million while they're in the White House. You don't think some of that money's coming from sketchy places and they're not returning the favors because they have power? Of course that's the case. So if you're not going to call that out, I don't give a shit what you have to say about Joe Biden. I don't care, because you're a partisan hack and you're full of shit and you don't actually care about corruption. So, but again, if you do, if you're objective about it, if you call it out wherever it applies, well, then I'll listen to you, because then I think you're reasonable. But my favorite part, though, was when she tries to blame the attempted insurrection on Joe Biden. I thought that was cute. She makes it seem like, what are we going to do? What happens when there's no accountability is you get the people who stormed the Capitol. It is what it is. Imagine flipping the parties there and see if she's so sympathetic in her explanation. And it's inconceivable. There's no way. And to blame Biden for what happened at the Capitol is ridiculous. There's a lot of factors that go into what happened at the Capitol. Some of it does involve poverty and degradation and people being left behind by a system, but a lot of it's also just brainwashing from Newsmax and One American News Network and Trump pretending like it's a fraudulent election when it's not a fraudulent election. But to blame the attempted insurrection on Joe Biden, I mean, these people, fact of the matter is she works backwards from her conclusion, and her conclusion always is Biden bad, Democrats bad, and she's like a cartoon character. Drunk on QAnon, impeaching Biden on day one. Listen, I'm no fan of Joe Biden. Everybody knows I'm no fan of Joe Biden. I'm super critical of Joe Biden. I did not want him winning this primary against, the other Democrats in the field. But he won it. And in the same way, I wish Trump would do good things for the country. I wish Biden would do good things for the country. But this idea that you impeach him before he's even done anything, that says a lot about what's going to happen moving forward. And Biden better wake up in this sense. He's got this naive view that the fever is going to break with Trump, and after Trump, Republicans will get a lot more reasonable. Joe, what are you talking about? How much evidence do you need to the contrary? You were vice president under Barack Obama. There was historic obstruction under Barack Obama. They even obstructed when Obama did their ideas. When Obama wanted to cut taxes for small businesses, and when Obama did the Heritage Foundation healthcare plan, the Mitt Romney healthcare plan. That was a right-wing healthcare plan. He did it and still got 0 Republican votes. They're not going to work with you. And if they ever do work with you, it would only be on the worst priorities like cutting Social Security and Medicare. So, you better wake up and stop being ridiculous and stop thinking that there's some sort of hope. But the fact of the matter is, Joe Biden half agrees with these people anyway, so he doesn't view their ideology as egregious, and you and I do view their ideology as egregious, so that's why he's a little more sympathetic to them overall. But, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I mean, let's be honest. There is no working with somebody like this because there is no coherent ideology or philosophy. There's just raw partisan garbage going on in her head. That's it. There's no ideology. Listen, there are people you can work with across the aisle on certain issues. You want to work with somebody like Rand Paul on criminal justice reform or ending wars? Great, no problem. In fact, I encourage that. You want to work with somebody like Hawley on $2,000 checks? Great, I encourage that. But, listen, there are some TFGs in Congress. Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of them. If you're talking about impeaching before the president even did anything, president-elect even did anything, where do we go from there? We go nowhere, and I'm going to mock you because you deserve all the mockery in the world.